Well, President Bush had to defend his strategy for years in Iraq, so I guess we're in that phase of criticism for President Obama. But here's where we are as a country. The American people do not have the appetite or the will right now, or the money for that matter, to put boots on the ground at the measurable point of what the Republicans want to do right now in the Syrian civil war. So where are we? This strategy is what we are living with. For more on this, let's go to Colonel Jack Jacobs, MSNBC political analyst and military expert. Colonel, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me on the program.
You bet. What would more troops do if we were to inject troops into Syria? How do we know that would work?
Well, I think if you talk to military people who have some experience on the ground, they will probably tell you that at modest levels, it won't improve the situation at all. What you really need is a fairly substantial number of people. I'm talking about more than 100,000. And for a long period of time, if you listen to what Stanley McChrystal has said in the past, and he knows as much about this sort of stuff as anybody alive, he said at least a decade. So we're not doing that. I mean, we're not doing that. And in fact, you can make an argument. Let me preface everything by saying we need to get rid of these guys, ISIS. They're really bad news. They're apocalyptic. They want to kill everybody, including themselves. I mean, everybody. This is not just a stunt. These guys are not Al-Qaeda. These are very, very, very serious people who are driving toward the apocalypse. So something needs to be done about them, and soon. Having said that, you're absolutely right. The American people don't have the appetite for it. And, as a matter of fact, the guys who really ought to be engaged here are precisely the people who are not engaged. That is, the countries in the region who have a great deal at stake if ISIS continues to be successful. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey. Right now, the only guys really doing anything seriously there are the French and the Americans. And not very much, too.
What about the Kurds? What about the Kurds?
Well, the Kurds are working really hard. There are two problems with the Kurds. The first is that there are not a whole lot of them. I mean, they're really, really good, but there are not a whole lot of them. And second, and maybe more important, is that the Kurds do not want to take over Syria. They just want to be left alone. They want to get people off their backs and live in peace. And what success there really requires is a large number of troops on the ground seizing and holding terrain from ISIS and then staying there long enough so that local institutions can be built up, start collecting the trash and all the rest of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And that takes a lot of people. The Kurds are not prepared to do that. They don't want to do it. They don't want to be in charge of Syria, which is not Kurdish. I mean, only a small portion of it is. So, to a greater or lesser extent, the Kurds are just defending themselves, really. Mm-hmm. And so we can't seem to muster any interest among the people who really ought to be doing something there to do something there.
It's like they're waiting for the United States, and they're appreciative that the French are now engaged. I mean, the French are in it now. There's no question about that. This is their 9/11. Now, whether it's going to motivate other countries, but the issue of NATO comes up, and there is a membership clause in NATO that if the French take action at NATO, that it would force all 28 nations to make a statement of position on where they are on this, if I have that correctly.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, so is that coming? Is that important? Is that necessary? Your thoughts?
It is important, it is necessary, and it is coming, but as I guess the architect Mies van der Rohe once said, the devil is in the details. So we've seen a wide variety of assertions of under the auspices of NATO since the formation of NATO, and they have run the gamut from full-blown participation on the one hand
to hands off.
much more frequently. That's really good. It's really bad news that this has happened, and our hearts and minds are with you, and that's about it. So at the end of it's like they say in the litigation business, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. And what needs to happen now is that the State Department needs to be negotiating very, very heavily with our allies and push the limits of involvement of other people. The United States is not going to do this stuff alone. We've been doing it for a long time and don't have a lot to show for it, honestly.
You know, a picture tells 1,000 words. President Obama huddled with one interpreter with Vladimir Putin at the G20. The journalistic question is, what did you talk about? What do you think? What do you think they talked about, and how close are the Russians going to be to the United States and vice versa when it comes to dealing with ISIS?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Well, I can tell you they weren't talking about the price of oil, which the Russians are very concerned about. But having said that, that's not what they were talking about. But you raise a very interesting point. So we're on the opposite side of the Russians and the Iranians in Syria. We're on the other side. They want to hold on to Assad. We want to dump him. I mean, that's been our major focus.
Yeah, it has.
Now, all of a sudden, our objective doesn't seem to be to get rid of Assad, or probably shouldn't be. Our common objective needs to be to get rid of ISIS. Now, with the downing of the Russian airliner.
And now that the Russians have said it is terrorism, that's the story this morning.
And today they said, they said it's terrorism, which everybody knew, but they confirmed it through they found explosive residue on the fuselage. The Russians are now very highly motivated to, instead of just bombing the opponents of Assad, to now get serious about getting rid of ISIS. There is with a common enemy, there is a possibility that you might see the United States and Russia and maybe even Iran coalescing into an organization that can really get something done. And this means that a couple of things, some are good and some are a little distasteful. One of them is that good stuff, we might start sharing some intelligence information. And it's intelligence that's going to defeat these guys, not just bombs. It's going to take intelligence. The second thing is, and this makes it extremely difficult for the president and the United States generally, it might very well be that we'll have to make a deal with Russia and Iran that we're going to shut up about getting rid of Assad right now. He knows he's going. I think the Russians have already told him he's going, but not until things get stabilized inside the country. Yeah. And I think we're going to have to sign on to that. That means the president's got something of a public relations problem. But I hark back, and I don't want to talk about this too much because it takes a lot of time, but there's plenty of precedent for this. We defeated the Nazis in the Second World War, being allied with Stalin. And Stalin killed more Russians than the Nazis did. I mean, talk about a bloodthirsty despot. He was it, but he, as much as anybody else, contributed to the defeat of the Axis, and we were on his side. We might want to think about that again. Interesting point.
You know, everybody talks about how tough Putin is. You now have a Russian civilian airliner downed. If that had happened on Nikita Khrushchev's watch, somebody had been nuked by now.
I think you're absolutely
all this talk about Putin being so tough, wait a minute. He's not as tough as the last guy from decades ago during the Cold War.
No, Khrushchev's finger was always on the trigger.
No doubt. Colonel Jack Jacobs, always. Great to have you with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ed.
You bet.